Thank you for joining us today on our session, Book Trailers in the Classroom, helping students improve comprehension, collaboration, and motivation through movie-making programs. Today we're going to be discussing our research and classroom implementation and ways that you can use book trailers in your own classroom. My name is Madeline Lewis. My teaching degree is in early childhood education. I have a master's degree in reading education K-12 from USF St. Pete. And this year I'm a first-year teacher teaching third grade in Manatee County.
I am Lindsay McDonald, also a USF St. Pete graduate student with a master's in reading education K-12. My undergrad degree was in elementary education. I have been teaching for about 10 years, and this is my first year as a reading coach in Manatee County. So what are book trailers? When we think about book trailers, think about a movie trailer. So when you're at the movie theater, trailers come on. They're just a quick preview of what is to come. So when you think about a book trailer, it's the same thing. They're short. They get straight to the point of what the book will be about. What we're going to talk about today is solely thinking about it within literacy, although book trailers can be used across many content areas and genres. Any age range can use book trailers to aid in comprehension. And when we think about what students are going to be able to do, that will lead where they're going with their book trailer. So without further ado, we'll show you an example of what a book trailer looks like.
Okay, so today we are going to be talking about two featured movie-making programs that we used within our research, Animotocom and iMovie through Apple. Both are going to be discussed later, the ways that you can use them, the ways that we use them, and then an example will be shown of what an Animoto trailer will look like. So this project all started with research that I did through USF St. Pete in my undergrad action research. I started with 5 fourth graders who were struggling in reading, and I realized that a lot of their struggling came from their comprehension of the story and their ability to retell aspects of the story. Their aspects would include tiny details that really didn't have a lot to do with the story, or they would retell the entire story from beginning to end. So they weren't able to kind of take those main idea and key details and put them together. So I worked for 14 weeks, sometimes once a week, sometimes 3 to 5 times a week with each student. I worked individually and I worked in small groups with them. And we made 2 book trailers, spending most of those 14 weeks just physically going over what retell of a story looks like and how the trailer would look before we even got into the technology aspect. And these students were really able to make increases in their literacy skills, in their reading comprehension, which helped them in 4th grade with their end-of-the-year exams. So here's an example that's in a handout provided for you of the template that we use to make the book trailers. It really just allowed us to break down the materials using a graphic organizer that the students could manipulate. They could add pages if they wanted to from the book that they were working on. They could add in little notes. They could say, oh, I'd like this transition when I get to my final piece. It was just another way for them to kind of physically maneuver their thinking. And then here's a poster as well. This was my final action research poster that I presented at the end of my graduate degree. This is also available in the handout. It's just a student checklist of what the students were expected to do by themselves as they were working. They needed materials present in the final trailer. They needed to be showing that they were working throughout their work, identifying their thinking, identifying, oh, do I have these key elements? If I don't, I need to go back and address it. So it made them accountable for their work. And then again, at the end, they had a rubric, which is also available for you, that I used, and I showed and I worked with them to say, here's the elements that need to be present in your trailer. If right now you're at a 2 or a 3, let's see what we can do to work yourself up to a 4. And then that aspect changed when I wanted to see what it would be like for my own classroom, being I was going to be a first-year teacher, and I decided I would like to do this whole group, but I don't know how I would, so I contacted Lindsay for help.
So as Madeline and I played around with the idea of taking book trailers into the classroom, we thought about what would be difficult for a teacher beginning something like this with their students. What were things that teachers should think about and have in mind before they started something like this? And so thinking about that with my classroom, we felt that at the end of the year they were prepared to try something new, so they helped us out with that. A little background on my class. I taught at a Title I school. All of the students in my classroom, many of them, of the 22, were English language learners, most of them reading about 1.5 years below grade level. With the trailer that you saw earlier with Bud Not Buddy, we used that as our model piece and working the students through each process together. One thing that helped my students, I think, was that we had used technology a lot in the classroom throughout the year. We had a classroom blog that students were already familiar with using to record their thinking or to respond to each other, so they were already familiar with those kinds of aspects of technology. So thinking about which pieces we were working on with our book trailer. Now remember, this was solely thinking about it within narratives. However, this can be used in informational text. It can be used with any content area. But I wanted my students to be able to retell what they had been working on. So were they getting the aspects of the story? And focusing especially on were they able to explain how characters respond to challenges in their books. One aspect of this that I also included was thinking about, since we're making videos, including images and other multimedia that help to show the tone of the text. And that was something that I felt like my students really took away from this. In all of the work, they were really thinking about, do the images make sense? Does the background make sense? Is it helping to help my readers understand the kind of story that this really is? So you also have this in your handouts as just thinking about where are your students in instruction? What kinds of skills and strategies are you working on in your classroom when you're in your literacy genre? And then this can also be applied to your informational text as well. So what does this look like in my classroom? We thought about, before we even introduced students to the technology pieces, what were things that they needed to have accomplished before they started working on the computer? You know, sometimes we jump right into technology and then we've lost them. So we wanted to make sure that we built the foundation before we put them on the computer for Animoto. So the first thing we started with was introducing the rubric that you saw in your handouts and getting their attention by showing examples of book trailers. In the first few days, we worked through story mapping using what we used was a story mountain, like beginning, middle, end. Whatever graphic organizer you prefer for your students to retell is fine. But you want to get their ideas on paper first before you even start thinking about technology. In our instruction, we were focused on were they able to identify the major problem in the text, and then also how the students handled, or how the characters handled the problem in the story. By the end of the first week, students started working on the book trailer graphic organizer, which is also in your handouts, and just as kind of taking a skeleton plan of their book and starting to think about what their book trailer would look like. Really kind of thinking about what are the pieces that I have to have in my book trailer so that my reader or my viewer understands what this book is about, but not giving away too much. Remember, it's a trailer. We aren't giving away the whole book. We want to leave their viewer wanting more. So by the end of the first week, students had their graphic organizer, their story mountain, and beginning on their book trailer. Second week is when we start playing around with technology. So giving students some time to explore on Animoto or on iMovie, whichever you prefer, and getting them to find pieces that maybe you aren't aware of. So giving them that exploratory time gets their focus when it's time to get to work. So the first couple of days is just exploring and then beginning to add text. Once students have completed their text slides, then we started having them insert images, making sure that those images add to the text that they're supporting. So one thing that we did, some of my students were reading like graphic novels or I Survive books that have really great illustrations that they wanted to include. One way to do that we found was to take pictures of the images that they had found in their book that they wanted to use and then send them those images through our classroom blog. Then they were able to download them. If your students have books that don't have images, which a lot of them will, then we taught them how to find appropriate images online and then download them and save them as well. By the end of the second week, students are ready for adding in their music and then they're ready for publication. So really looking at revising and editing using the checklist and the rubric that are provided. One thing that we found was that through the use of peer reviews, students were very mindful of what information and what images and music was on their book trailer. And we found a lot of them trying out, if they saw something on their friend's book trailer, trying to put it in theirs and realizing, it doesn't quite match my book. So they would make adjustments so that it did. So just thinking about through the process of that collaboration together, they really grew and were able to understand which parts of that make sense and why. By the end of our project, we had a production party. So we invited lots of classes into our room and administration to host a production party. That included, thinking about it like at the movie theater with popcorn, asking people to come in and watch our videos. They felt like producers. Then thinking through the next steps, those videos were then uploaded to our school's website. They were shared on our school's Facebook page and gave our students the feeling of an authentic audience. So knowing that those things were going to be published to the community, they took great pride in carefully selecting what they put onto their book trailer. So as you're thinking about each day, what this looks like, we would model with Bud Not Buddy, the video that you saw before, and using that as our shared read and our model text and also model video, we would show students what was expected through that day and then give them a reminder on the board. So by the end of today, you should have these things accomplished. So giving them almost an additional checklist. Yes, they have the handout checklist, but what do I need to do today by the end of class? And of course, you're going to have students who are early finishers. Every student is different. So by the end of our production time, I still had some students who were working on entering their text, adding video, or adding pictures, whereas other students were ready. They were ready to self-assess. They were ready for a partner review. So we kind of had two things going on there on the last couple of days. So thinking ahead as far as where your students will be and trying to give them reminders as far as, okay, if you're still on this piece, this is what you're working on. If you're ready, these are your reminders. So we wanted to show you another example of now something that our students created. This is a video made by one of my students. Remember that this is made by a ESOL student, so a second language learner. I was assessing her on her comprehension of the text, as well as her ability to show the tone and mood of the text through her images and through her music. So see what you think. one thing about the book trailers that also helps our most struggling readers is that ability to motivate them and engage them in literacy. One thing I noticed out of especially some of my most struggling readers was that they were able to then take that technology and blossom. So I had one student who I could not get her to read anything other than Sarah Plain and Tall. It was the only book she read all year long. She loved it. But through the use of the book trailers, she was able to teach her classmates parts of Animoto that even we weren't aware of. She found out how to change the song in the middle of a video to increase what was happening in the text, or to add to that, to show that tone and mood. So through those conversations and building the confidence of our readers, they're able to take charge of their own learning, and then through a way that is different than anything else that they've been asked to do. They're no longer having to show their learning on paper and pencil, but they're taking it to today's technology world.
Okay, so now we're going to get into the two different kinds of movie making programs that we've featured today. Pardon me. All the work that I did with my students in my action research was through Animotocom, and the research that we did in Lindsay's classroom was also through Animotocom. Originally, the trailers that I made as examples to show students before we got into the movie making programs was through Apple iMovie, because that's what I had access to, and that's what I knew really well. So throughout my research and through my time with Lindsay's class, I was still developing with Animotocom, and I was still kind of finding new and interesting ways that we could change things.
So all the videos that you've seen so far today were made through Animoto.com. Animoto is available online, and it is also an app that you can download on iOS devices and also on Android. It does have a free option as well as paid pricing options. For the paid pricing options, it is $8 per month. You can cancel at any time. One thing that it gets you is longer videos, which I wasn't too concerned about just making trailers. I didn't need them to be full-length films. And another thing that it gets you is the removal of the watermark that you saw on the videos. So the Bud Not Buddy video was made from a paid account, no watermark. The I Survived the Shark Attack was made through our free account, and it had the watermarks on the side. Just depends on your preference, and also where you're going to be publishing the videos. If it's just for use in the classroom, perhaps the free account, but if you're publishing out to the outside community, maybe paying that one-time fee of the $8 per month and then canceling whenever you don't need it anymore. One thing that you need to keep in mind with Animoto, though, is that internet is required for the app to work. So if that is an issue in your school or in your school building, that's something to consider. A bonus is that you are able to save the videos. You can download them, upload them, and share them onto any number of sites or resources that you have. And you can create an unlimited number of projects at one time. So in order to tackle that, what we decided to do was create one teacher account using my email and then just a student-friendly password. And then all of our students logged on using that same information and created all of their videos in the same place. Made it much easier for management.
Okay, so another option would be Apple iMovie. The downside of Apple iMovie is that it's only available through Apple products. So if you don't have access in your school to Apple products, it's not going to be what you're going to use. It is free. It comes downloaded on all Apple iPads, iPhones, iMacs, laptops. It's available for you. It takes up a lot of space, which is also something to consider. If you have a classroom iPad, you can use it same way we used Animoto, where you would keep everything on one account and then just the students could access it as they needed. No internet is required to actually use it and to manipulate the videos. It is required if you are going beyond downloading, if you are publishing, if you're uploading it to Facebook or YouTube, you are going to need the internet. But if you're just showing it in your classroom like we did, there's no need for internet. It has self-created projects that you can go into and simply just click in and plug in videos that work a lot better with younger audiences. So students who are not as familiar with iMovie or who are not old enough to kind of manipulate the program a little bit more, the trailer aspect of it, you can just plug videos straight in, add your text, it's done. It's a lot easier than going in, into the full iMovie program where you need a lot more time and energy to really go through and pick apart those finite aspects of it. Like with Animoto, it's an unlimited amount. You can make as many as you want. It really comes down to what you have access to in your school and what your preference is, because if you're not an Apple person, usually it's hard to get into an Apple product and start playing around. You're not familiar with it. But either one of these programs we've done with our students and we feel are two of the better programs that you could use. So as we've said, book trailers can be used across grade level and across genres for multiple age ranges. It's a really great tool to use as a culminating assessment for student comprehension of grade level standards. Students can really show, here's what I've learned throughout a project, whether it be literature, whether it be a science fair project or a history project. They can use this as their finalized project to show, here's what I've learned, here's the materials that I've tackled.
And as we've discussed today, this can be implemented whole group as we did with our model of Bud Not Buddy. So thinking about a shared read that you and your students have been working on, or a large content area understanding that you and your students have been doing in class. You can also implement this in small groups. So thinking about students having different roles as far as what parts they will be assigned in creating the book trailer, and then each student can be responsible for a different piece. And then also independently. So students taking what you've been working on in book trailers and then applying it solely on their own with teacher feedback and teacher support to their own independent choice text. Remember, this increases student engagement and motivation for all students. It can be used across grade levels for any student to really have them show what they have learned, and then also in a different way. So no longer thinking about this as a paper pencil assessment, but thinking in today's world, how else can we get students motivated and show also what they have learned? So thank you again for joining us today. After viewing today's session, you now have the tools to explore and try book trailers with your students in your classroom.
Thank you.